Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and we're specifically going to talk about a really nice sign of hope that specifically dungeon pastors and relic runners are warming up to the idea of being a dungeon master. All right, so I split the I split the tabletop role playing game world participants who are not players into 3 bins. Dungeon Masters. That's anybody who plays the current version of Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition right now. Dungeon Pastors. That's anybody who plays an old version of Dungeons and Dragons as their primary game. By the way, a primary game for all 3 of these. I think that anyone who plays a copy of an old game of Dungeons and Dragons that is not Dungeons and Dragons as their primary game as a relic runner. They're running a relic, right? So dungeon masters stand on one side of the fence, and they're like, we care about Dungeons and Dragons, we care about the future of Dungeons and Dragons, and we run Dungeons and Dragons current edition so we can engage with the company that owns Dungeons and Dragons, and we can engage with the Dungeons and Dragons community, which is generally the current version. Like, there's more people who play the current version of Dungeons and Dragons than all the old versions combined. That's a fact, okay? So with all that said, right, basically there's this divide, right? So you have dungeon masters, and then you have dungeon pastors and relic runners, right? And sometimes I just get really disappointed because I feel like the relic runners and the dungeon pastors, I get frustrated that they don't want the game to grow, right? But every now and then there's a beam of light, a ray of shining hope that I'm like, oh my gosh, I think they're starting to get it, right? So I really like this one Dungeons and Dragons commentator who is role playing the right way. I love that title, role playing the right way with DM James. He's got a great channel. I listen to him a lot. He's got a lot of good ideas. He's also a bicyclist, an older person who bicycles, which that's me. So like he's on a lot of my same frequencies. I disagree with him on a ton of stuff, but I like to listen to people. I like to listen to smart people, and that means, and when I filter the world that way, I end up listening to people I don't agree with, right? Which is fine. I don't have any issue with that. But DM James did this amazing, really wonderful video that said things he loved. And this guy is a dyed-in-the-wool relic runner. Like, he is very much like very anti 5e, right? Until I saw this video and he was like, things I love about 5e. So this is a person standing on the opposite side of the fence of me, right? And actually most dungeon masters, in my opinion. But he's got a list of things he's saying about that he loves about 5e. So what's the number one thing on his list? I love this. Number one thing on his list is, he says, is that he just comes out and he admits it. He admits the truth. Dungeons and Dragons attracts new players. That's the number one thing he listed as what he loves about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, right? It actually attracts new players. And the reality is that's where dungeon pastors and relic runners are falling down. They don't attract new players. They do a lot of what's called, in the church we call it sheep shifting. So when you take a Christian from one church and move him to another, it doesn't move the needle, right? And that's my issue with dungeon pastors and relic runners. They're not moving the needle, right? They're just taking players from one version of Dungeons and Dragons and moving them to another. They're not building the hobby the way Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition does. And I love that this comes out of a relic runner's mouth, and he speaks the truth, and I really appreciate it. It's not the only thing on his channel that I appreciate, and you guys should check him out. He's got a lot of cool ideas. He's got a lot of experience in tabletop role-playing games. I like a lot of his content. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but that doesn't mean his channel isn't super dope, and that doesn't mean that the things that some of the ideas that come out of his mouth aren't spot on, right? And so I'm definitely pointing you his way. He's got a very cool channel. Give him a listen. And let me know what your favorite thing is. We'll switch it, right? What's your favorite thing about any old version of Dungeons and Dragons? Because I'm going to take a note from him, right? All right, so all that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.